But let's start taking some questions because this is one of my favorite parts is really the interaction with all of you. And we've got a question here from Karina. Can you see that in the Zoom chat, Lynn? Can you tell us how we can deal with stage fright? It's such a
Yeah,
great question.
it is. And it's such a common problem amongst performers, even performers who are very experienced. So there's a couple of things that you've got to understand with stage fright. One is that it's based, the reason why we get the physical reaction like shaking, sweating, feeling nauseous, all of this is because our body has gone into a stage called fight or flight. And there's also freeze as well, which has been explained through the polyvagal theory. So by the time we get to this place where we've actually got these symptoms, it's kind of too late. So the idea is that actually we need to start before that. So if we wind back and say, well, what started my stage fright? And if it's something like believing that you aren't good enough, that you're going to be judged, that being visible is dangerous, that you're not capable, that what you want isn't isn't available to you, that being exposed is frightening, that you might get hurt. If these kind of beliefs are starting to kick in, then actually, if we get rid of the beliefs that lead up to the actual fight or flight stage, then we can get rid of stage fright very quickly. So for me, it's about getting rid of the actual beliefs that are triggering the fight or flight response that our body's gone into. So maybe exploring, first of all, what is the thought what are the thoughts that are going on in your head as you think about performing or singing in front of other people. So maybe Karina, have you identified what those thoughts are? And then while you think about that, I will also go on to this other questions. Are limiting beliefs part of our survival instinct? Tell us when we can or should fight or flight or freeze. Yeah, so limiting beliefs are not, no, because limiting beliefs didn't exist before we started to become sort of aware. Whereas you have that ability to go into fight or flight response right from the moment you exist. When you're born, for certain. Actually, I don't know factually whether you can go into. I think you can go into fight or flight as a baby, because I once heard a story about a guy who regressed, and he had a fear of drums. Like every time he heard drums, he had this incredible fear come up, and he just needed to get away or stop the sounds, anything that sounded like banging. And he couldn't figure out why for the life of him until he regressed and he went back to being in utero. So he was inside his mum's womb, and they grew up in an African country where there was a lot of unrest and there was some kind of civil war, and some people were coming to raid the house, and his mum had gone and hidden herself in a cupboard, and she was obviously very frightened. And what he was hearing, what he realized, was actually her fast heartbeat. And so he'd picked up her fast heartbeat and felt her fear, and then he became frightened. So that actually got carried out into when he, after he was born, and then, as he was growing up. And it wasn't until he identified that through hypnosis and regression that he actually discovered that he, had this fear that when he heard that sound, it was like that moment when his mum was really frightened and in fear of her life. So we have that already ingrained into our DNA. It's a survival instinct that saves us from, danger, from being eaten by predators, etc. So the beliefs are things that we pick up as we go through life, and so they're not really necessarily connected. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yeah, I think that's
Karina,
really, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, I think I think that's really important to understand, right? And I share your thoughts on that. Obviously, there's some instinctual reaction, but if we consider that fight or flight mode, a reactionary is more
Mm.
an immediate reaction, right? And I think that discovering your limiting beliefs, especially the ones you don't know you have, sometimes can be
Mhm.
so valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got. You wanted. Karina responded to your question. She's saying there. I'm scared that I might forget the lyrics sometimes or get pitchy when I get nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, when we get nervous and we start to shake and we start to get tension in our throat, we will actually maybe go off pitch. And then the other thing that happens, because your body's gone into this fight or flight, it's sending adrenaline and cortisol out. And the brain is going, well, I can't be doing with thinking about lyrics right now. I've got to run or I've got to fight. And so, of course, we do forget our lyrics. And then it's the memory of that moment that then creates consequent stage fright. So we remember, oh, remember that time when you forgot your lyrics or when you went off pitch. And now every time I go on stage, that's probably going to happen. And so now we build up this belief that it's going to happen again. So we need to wind back again to go, actually, if we just stop the whole process of fight or flight or the polyvagal process theory going into action, then actually we will be very, as my client said, very present in the moment. We'll be able to focus on doing all the things we need to do to stay on pitch, to remember the lyrics, and so on. Of course, if you haven't been practicing, if you haven't been doing the work that you need to do, then that might also be a contributing factor.
And I think it's really important. Important to realize that it's very normal, right? Every performer gets a surge of adrenaline, and that there's this fine line between when it is actually enhancing what you do and
Yeah.
when it becomes too much. And I think that's just important. If you haven't been performing for 30 years, to realize that everybody gets this surge of adrenaline. It's just getting the right balance. I mean, let's say if you drink a little bit of alcohol, you feel great. If you drink a lot, you feel awful, right? So, so it's a bit of that. You can embrace that nervousness in a positive way when you
Mm.
realize this can actually help, right? And there's a lot of just sometimes it can be a comforting thought. You're not alone. Even the greatest singers, some of the greatest singers of all time. There's a
Mm.
story about Jose Carreras, who's one of the most well-known tenors, one of the
Mm.
three tenors that for of our generation, and she was overheard saying backstage, the little me is trying to strangle the big me. The little me is trying to strangle the big me. And then I had a fit and said, get out of the way. The big me wants to sing. And then he went on stage. So realizing it's everybody's dealing with this.
Mm.
And in my personal experience, it really helps if you really helps just the more you're feeling good about yourself and your life. So tying this back into your beliefs, and you are the creator. If you're
Mm.
feeling good about things, you're going to go on stage, and you will be much more able to use that adrenaline. Whereas I've had moments in my life where I was an incredible amount of stress and turmoil, and still had to perform every
Mm.
night, and then in those instances experienced some weird things,
Yeah.
right? And even as a experienced performer. But
Yeah.
some really great stuff, and great questions,
There's
Karina.
another thing about once the adrenaline actually gets out into the system, we can't, pull it back in.
Yeah.
So you've got to use it. So I would highly recommend you run on the spot, do some star jumps just to help the body to disseminate the adrenaline and the cortisol through the body. That's another thing that could help rather than just standing there, and going, oh my God, I'm, feeling nervous. And the body and the brain don't really know very much difference between excitement and and fear. They actually start off in a very similar way. They have very similar reaction. Yeah.
That's great advice. One thing I can just share, maybe this will help some of you, but it helped me a lot when I would get nervous. Just look back. Let's say you've been rehearsing for a show or you've been practicing for your concert for months and weeks, and then for some reason you get this panic moment, everybody does before you go on stage. So one little inner monologue that helped me quite a bit was just say, how many times has this been absolutely dreadful in the last 6 weeks? Well, my rehearsals, every time I've done this. And the answer was always zero, right? It was never absolutely dreadful. So why should it all of a sudden now, after I've done it for hundreds of times, suddenly fall apart? It's not going to. It's not going to. Just remind yourself, you've got this. I used to visualize, you have this range. Here's like your very top, best performance of your life ever you can imagine. And here's like the worst performance of the last 3 weeks. Well, guess what? They're pretty close together. Right, and you're not going to drop below that level into the abyss. You're going to be somewhere in between that level. That was really comforting to me. I'm like, yeah, you're right, Philippe. You're right. It's not going to be dreadful. And then you just go on, and it worked for me. So maybe that kind of a inner monologue can
Yeah.
help you a little bit.
Self-talk. Yeah, self-talk's good. Yeah.
We've got a question from Diego, and then we've got a couple questions from Doug. Thank you guys for asking questions. Diego is asking, why do I get nervous only the first phrase of the song, not the whole song, just the first few seconds?
I don't know is the answer to that one. It might be more that you got nervous, and then as you started singing, you realized, oh, actually everything's okay. So you calmed down. I think, quite often. The other thing too, I would say, Diego, is how much do you practice starting your songs in a calm way? So it might be that you need to do some work around practicing starting songs but feeling calm. Because it's possible that you're so used to feeling nervous in the first phrase that now your brain just thinks that's what it's got to do, because our brain is kind of, our mind is a little bit dumb in as much as it just does whatever we think, whatever it thinks we want it to do. So if you have this expectation, oh, well, that first phrase is I'm always a bit nervy then the brain goes, oh, okay, yeah, well, let's just kick out a little bit of cortisol and adrenaline and make sure he's nervous, So maybe it's about actually reframing that to, I sing my calmly and easily and effortlessly right from the very first note or the very first word. And that becomes your mantra, and you start to practice that, making sure that you're giving yourself opportunities to just get up and try this out until eventually it just becomes who you are.
That's great advice. I highly recommend that. And I talk a little bit about that and how to practice, because often we spend so much time in an area that is not going to produce good results. So spending more time in other areas actually, let's just say, just a sneak peek. If you perfect the simple and polish the medium level difficult, guess what happens with the very difficult? It automatically gets easier. We've got a very good question from Doug here, and I know there's other people thinking this as well. From the realist side of thought here. Let me pop that into the chat for us. Do you believe a person's ability to develop a positive mindset will change their vocal function? Is a person's pitch concept based on their functional ability to meet the requirements of pitch?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of questions in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, do I believe a person's ability to develop a positive mindset will change their vocal function? Yes. So, if you believe that you're not good enough, that that what you want, which is maybe that high note, is not available to you, as I said earlier, the mind only can react to the pictures you send it and the messages you give it. And so if you're constantly giving those messages, it will ensure that that becomes your truth. So, what then happens is that maybe you get tension, or maybe you procrastinate and you don't do the work that you should do in order to develop that area of your voice. Or maybe even when it's right, you give yourself the excuse that, oh, well, it was just lucky, I just happened to luck out over that time, and it won't always happen. So, once you've got rid of whatever the mindset issues that are holding you back, you can just go and do the work that you need to do, get the feedback that you need to, and make adjustments, and then get the practice in as well. The exposure, the constant experience. And the reality is, what our voice is muscle, it's nerves, it's joints, it's ligament. It needs to be worked, and it needs repetition, just like any other motor skill does. We need to lay down the neural pathways in our brains, and we can't do that by just one off trying it out and then pulling back because it's not going right. We have to go in and we have to practice it. We have to make adjustments. We have to slow it down, do deep, deliberate practice. And then we will start to notice that the voice will develop and function more accurately. Now, if you have some sort of functional issue going on, like one of your vocal folds is paralyzed, or you've got some kind of swelling of your vocal folds, or some kind of pathology, that's a whole different matter. No mindset is going to overcome that. But the mindset may have prevented it in the first place. So I work around helping people get their mindset into a place where they don't feel stress and anxiety and tension. And so we release that tension from around the throat and the shoulders and the larynx, etc. And we also get people into that mindset of like allowing themselves the freedom of making mistakes, and of taking time to develop. And now they will notice that their function improves. So when it comes to pitch concept, and I'm not sure if I understand that completely. The way I'm interpreting that is what we hear. What do you think, Philippe?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the follow-up question, might a positive attitude just make a bad singer happy-go-lucky, but not make them a better singer just in their own mind? I think you touched on that. That's
Oh, so I'm still
just,
back on the other question, which is a person's pitch concept based on their functional ability to meet requirements of pitch?
yes, is it,
What's pitch concept, as in what you perceive? Because there's a whole lot of different things around pitch.
yeah,
So what we might need a little bit more, or I need a bit more explanation of that in order to
sure.
fully understand whether Doug means, is it like my ability to perceive pitch and then recreate it, or is it my ability to perceive pitch externally and then create it? So internal or external?
Yeah, I think that's I mean, Doug, you can go ahead and type in a little bit more clarity if you'd like. But if you think of a person's pitch concept, a pitch concept is not so much the functional ability to create a frequency or a pitch. Pitch concept is more about how you hear and process the auditory information. So do you hear that frequency? Are you hearing the frequencies? Is that your pitch concept? So maybe Doug can help us get a little bit more clear, but then repeating that is a functional ability. But I think I'd have to agree completely with the fact that the way you think, I believe singing is a thought controlled action, right? So the way you think about your singing directly impacts how you sing. And the clearer your concept of how singing works, the clearer the mind. Is just amazing how it can just add things to your voice, simplify things. Sometimes it's simply a thought. You know, as we're coaching singers all over the world, one very famous singer that I was on stage with, and we talked about it. He's an amazing Wagnerian tenor, but anyway, he would just say, "We need to find the right vocabulary for you individually, because what might work for me in singing vocabulary or concepts
Mm.
doesn't work necessarily for everybody else. But when you find your own vocabulary, right?
Mm,
That basically the wording or the images, the feelings that make that click for you, then amazing things happen. And just on a side note here, I just experienced this. Okay, I have a client that stopped coaching about 6 months ago and contacted me about 4 weeks ago, having some real serious vocal issues.
mm,
And I identified that as something I call a vocal split. And I worked with her for, with the the methods that have been shown to be successful, several sessions. I think we did 3 sessions, and it improved a little bit. And then just yesterday, I found the right vocabulary, the right thing that worked from her, and her voice went from "Hi, how are you?" to "I'm just fine, thank you very much." It just
mm,
immediately started transforming, and it's
mm,
wonderful to see that. But it wasn't, the other things worked. Yeah, we know they therapeutically they work, they were going well, but it wasn't the thing that made her voice click, get back
mm,
to that reset normal.
mm,
And I'm working with her a lot with the mindset, because this is very, very stressful for a singer that has any kind of vocal distress. And just because I've had a long career and I've had a lot of colleagues that have gone through these phases, I was able to say to her, this does happen. It's not the end of the world. It's happened to very famous people. It's happened to colleagues, and it's don't feel like it's your voice is ruined, it's never going to come back. This
mm,
does happen, it's important to correct it, and it's very correctable, and it will, once we just need to work on it for a few weeks, and then your voice will go back to the new normal, and then we'll improve from there. So that's just so comforting mentally to her, to know it's not over. My singing career is not over. I'm an awful singer. I'm an awful person. So it's
mm,
very, very important how you think about
mm.
your singing. Anything you want to add? I'm going to jump back into the chat and look and see
Mhm.
what Doug has responded for us.
Um, I, Identity, our voice is very strongly tied in with our identity. And then, of course, identity is tied in with our beliefs. So everything for me is connected. Yeah.
I love you
So,
said that. I love you said that. It's so true. If you look in the mirror, there's your visual identity. Close your eyes, there's your inner identity. Start speaking, that's a huge part of your daily identity that everyone around you interacts
mm,
with. Not even singing. Your voice is such an important part of your
yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
Here's
Well,
some
people who are not professional voice users who lose their voice will go into depression. Yeah.
yeah. We've got
So,
some more comments from Doug there to maybe give us some clarity in his line of thinking. How perhaps we can help him out a little bit more.
pitch is absolute, not subjective. Some don't know they're out of pitch. A good attitude is not going to change their understanding of 440. But if their attitude is stopping them from identifying that they're going off pitch, then that will have an impact, I would have thought. And it's not, I mean, what I'm talking about is not having a good attitude. That's not what I'm talking about at all, if that's what you think, Doug. I'm talking about getting rid of limiting beliefs that prevent you from behaving or thinking or reacting in a way that's going to take you to where you want to get to. So if somebody has a belief that they're on pitch, in spite of all the evidence, including, if the teacher tells them they're off pitch or they're singing into into a tuner and then it's showing them they're off pitch, that's probably going to be more than just beliefs. That's maybe going to be something that's more psychiatric. That
Yeah,
would be my thoughts. But most people, once they see the evidence, will go, "Oh, okay, I thought that was on pitch, but I can see now what you're talking about when I hear my voice versus your voice, I can hear that we're not singing the same pitch. When I look at the, at the hertz measurement, I can see that I'm not on pitch. Then the issue is like, am I willing to go and do the work that's required to correct that or not? And I work from a very functional point of view when it comes to voice, and I've been able to correct a lot of people who haven't been able to sing on pitch or haven't even identified that they couldn't sing on pitch, because I feel like people aren't tone deaf, they are pitch disorientated, because they just, there are some people who've been born with an aptitude for pitch and music. I did. I didn't know that people couldn't recreate pitch accurately until I was much older. I just thought it was just something that everyone did. But there are some people who they have to work much harder at that to figure out what they're hearing, how does that identify with what they're producing and recreating. So when someone says to me, can you teach anyone to sing? I'll say the short answer is yes, as long as, they don't have some sort of physiological issue impeding them. But the long answer is it depends very much on their motivation, the amount of work they do, and how willing they are to accept, that it's a long haul, not a short haul.
Yeah, I think that's exactly kind of the clarity that Doug's asking for. Just thinking positively about your singing does not take away the real time and effort and practice you have to put into to develop the coordinations. However, changing your limiting beliefs and replacing them with positive beliefs will vastly accelerate that process.
So I'm not coaxing singers or musicians to feeling okay about whatever they produce. I don't think I ever said that, did I?
No, no, but it may have come across that way because there are some people that just saying, yeah, and we had kind of that. Then scientifically, we look at these generations, and there was a generation where everyone was told, at least maybe in the United States, you are fantastic, and everybody gets a prize, and everybody gets a trophy, and everybody gets a ribbon. And then there was some disconnect that people talk about, of just disconnect from what's good and what's really not good, what's really, a high performance level. If everybody's feeling good about themselves, but that's kind of a different conversation in a way. But a lot of people have become a little hypersensitive about just saying, think positively and go out and buy a boat,
No,
you know.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not a person who believes in the power of positive thinking. I believe in optimism for absolute sure, but just saying everything's good and you're good and all that sets the mindset up to believe is that, oh, I'm only going to be good, and if I'm not, then there's obviously something very bad going on, and I'm not. I've got to be more perfect, and all sorts of different things will happen. No, beliefs don't work that way. So you know, I know that there is a reputation for singers not being very good musically, and I do believe from an educational point of view, singers aren't necessarily encouraged into musicianship, and I disagree with it. I come from a jazz background, so I'm very au fait with musicality, and I also have an instrumental background. But I also acknowledge that many singers come into singing through imitation, through hearing somebody singing and going, oh, I'd like to try that. And you can go a long way as a singer in your career without actually having any musical input, like from an educational, theoretical point of view. Does that mean that someone's any less valid as a performer?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And I can just share a personal experience. I mean, I was doing a very, very well-known musical, and I'm not going to name names because I'm not going to point anybody out, but I was the leading man with an older leading lady who was and happened to be very famous all across Europe. And I can tell you, in rehearsals, she could not read a single note in the music, and she didn't know anything about it really, but she was had very good musician in spite of that. But she did have to learn things differently. But she was very solid in her performance. She has had one of about as successful career as you can have.
Mm,
And no, she did not have 10% of the musical knowledge that I have. And if
mm,
I compare, in my personal opinion, with one of our colleagues, Carell, who's here with us, if I compare my understanding of music and music theory and application with his, then I feel like I don't know anything, right?
Mm,
So there is a large degree, and I totally agree with you, that the more you know, the more empowered you can become. But yeah, we shouldn't say that somebody that doesn't have the understanding is a bad musician. But
mm,
I also believe, like you, the more information and knowledge they have, the more empowered that you will become as a singer, and the easier it's going to be for you to, especially, I talked with Carell about this a long time, but let me ask Carell, do you want to jump in? Can I ask you a
Sure,
question?
it's
All
chaotic
right,
here,
I'm
but
going to
absolutely.
put you here on the spotlight, but we talked about this before. It's like, how big of an advantage is it for you as a musician? You're a singer, a songwriter, you're a musician, you played with very famous ensembles. How advantageous is it for a singer to come into a rehearsal and be able to communicate clearly with the band?
Oh, it's huge because first of all, the frustration of not being able to put into words what you want is just excruciating.
mm,
The singer that walks in and says, I'll know it when I hear it," and the rest of the band is sitting there saying, "Yeah, a little direction, please." It
mhm.
wastes hours and hours and hours. Plus, the singer that can communicate concisely gets the band's respect. And every time they have an off the wall, like, creative idea, I think we should bust out the cajones. Like, the band will take them seriously because they know that, okay, this person can articulate what's in their mind, no matter how outlandish or precise. It's huge.
So I have a challenge for you. How much musical theory do you think Ella Fitzgerald had?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
None, probably none.
Yeah.
But she
So
had a good ear and she could communicate. I'm sure she could just, even if she sang it. Go ahead.
right. Yeah. So yeah, she could sing it, and then the musicians, then worked around it. It's a very it's an interesting discussion, and I don't know if it's for tonight, but it's one which I constantly think about. I mean, I felt like I needed to empower myself by understanding theory and being, having strong musicianship. But do you know why I did it? I didn't do it because I wanted to be able to communicate. It was because I wanted to prove that I deserved to be there. And that was because I believed I wasn't good enough. So it happened to work in my advantage because now I can write my own arrangements. I can communicate very simply with musicians, but I don't know if it made me any better as a singer.
Yeah, I think I'd like to jump onto that thought because this is what it triggered in me. It us that we talk about, the more you know, the more empowered you are. Great, but that could quickly become a limiting belief, couldn't it? For me, it could quickly become a limiting belief that I don't know enough, so I'm not going to be able to do a good job, and
Right.
that would defeat the purpose in and of itself, wouldn't it?
I work with singers all the time who say, it's not good enough. I need it to be perfect. And like I constantly say, how many times do you go to a gig and it's perfect? And even if it was perfect, would you really enjoy it? Maybe not, because actually what I love about performers who are able to be imperfect is that you feel like you can connect to them. There's something very human about that. I also wanted to point out that Pavarotti didn't read one note.
That's crazy. I mean, that's really hard for me to believe, having done so much opera and knowing how difficult some of this repertoire can be to learn. I mean, that's just
And here's another one to blow your mind. You know, the trumpet player who did the line, who was in the LSO, and they did Star Wars. You know, the trumpet line. I can't remember how it goes now. That's it. That's it. Yeah. He couldn't read music either.
Yeah, it's amazing. So
He's one of the most recorded trumpet players in the world. Now, is it right? Is it wrong? It doesn't, first of all, he got into LSO, so what does it matter? And secondly, everybody wants to sound like him. Every trumpet player, I should say, wants to sound like him, have that clean, high sound. What did it matter if he could read the notes or not? And he was playing he was in the LSO, for heaven's sakes. They were playing a lot of complicated music. He learned it all by ear.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think, people want, maybe this is another problem with limiting beliefs as well, is we want to measure ourselves in two ways, with against other people. Sometimes it's positive, saying this is where I want to be, and sometimes it's an excuse. This person didn't do it, so I don't have to.
Right.
Right. So it's really important to become your creator. Take control, right? And then decide, okay, what's important for you? What do you need? You don't have to be like everybody else. We have examples of success, with a very high level of success with an ineptitude here. Well, that didn't stop them. Fantastic. And then but that was that person, right? What is it that you want for yourself? And what are your beliefs? I think that gives you more harmony within yourself.
Yeah. So, Carell says, I'm the king of imposter syndrome. And that's such a common experience for people. So that's based on beliefs. There'll be definitely a bunch of beliefs there that are feeding into, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve to be here, I'm not worthy, everyone else is better than I am, I should be working harder, I haven't worked hard enough. All of those kind of beliefs are going to feed into that feeling of being an imposter. I'll get caught out. I used to feel like that. Absolutely, I used to feel like that. And as a result, I mean, this is something which has just changed recently, but only because I have something to say. I wouldn't do stuff like this. I wouldn't have come on with a whole bunch of strangers that I've never met, and talk about my work. People might find me by accident and then they'll tell somebody else. And so that's how, I used to get clients. But I'd never go out in public and talk about it because I believed I was an imposter, that someone would find out about me, whatever it was. But because I've eliminated those beliefs that feed into that, I don't feel like that anymore. I'm okay with criticism. I'm fine with people who don't believe in what I'm talking about because I know it's nothing to do with me. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person, and it doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just that, that's their beliefs and that's what's driving them to say whatever they say.
Right. So sometimes I think it can get a little bit confusing, on this path, because you're like, okay, I remember very clearly. You start identifying some limiting beliefs, and you want to create better beliefs, right? And to empower and accelerate your journey to. But what happens when it can easily happen that you start going, oh, there's a limiting belief, there's a limiting belief. Oh, is that a limiting belief? People, then you start getting a little bit nervous about every thought and start really over evaluating every thought. What is there a system or a guideline that I mean, you've shared several links with us, and I'm happy to, if anybody wants to write to me at singingrevealed@gmail.com, please write. And Lynn said she's happy to share some of these resources. But what's a good guide for identifying and not getting over concerned?
Yeah. So there'll be a belief that's driving that behavior and that thought pattern. So getting rid of that first. So the other thing is that when you don't have the limiting belief, you just get on with things. And then one day you'll notice, like I did a session for myself 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I noticed, and this is part of what I was talking about just before, I noticed that I wasn't going out and doing all the videos and the promotional stuff on the work that I'm doing now in my private practice. I'm really excited about it, working with these high-end, multi-faceted, creative people who are already really successful in what they do, but just want to bring it all together and take it further. I love talking about it, but I wasn't doing the marketing that I need to start helping people understand that's what's happening in my practice. So I did a session, and what instigated it was that I wasn't happy with something that wasn't happening in my life or that I wasn't doing. And so then I went and did the work. So I don't go looking for limiting beliefs. I just look for, where am I not happy in what I'm doing and with myself? Where am I having conflict or issues? So another one was when I had a situation recently in a social network I have, and I got very upset and hurt by something that someone said to me. So then I went and explored it, because people will say things and do things. They just will, because they've got their beliefs driving them. But what's more important is that, how am I reacting to that? How am I coping with that? How am I managing it? And how's it impacting my life and my ability to feel happy, content, satisfied, to be striving and thriving? And then, if it's interfering with that, because that's my expectation, is that I will thrive in life, I will achieve my goals, I will prosper, I will feel happy, I will have good relationships, my business will do well, all of this sort of thing. I'll feel comfortable talking to strangers. That was something that I never used to feel comfortable about. When those things aren't happening, then I go and find out, well, what's at the bottom of this? What's the belief that's feeding into the issue? So rather than just saying, oh, what are all my beliefs and let's get rid of the ones that aren't working, it's like, what's my behavior, my thought patterns, my emotional reactions?
Yeah, it's a good point. And but like you said, there's a belief behind everything. So for someone like me, then I just start thinking, da, 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 da. I'm like, oh no, where's the other one? Where's the other one? Where are these? I
Yeah,
used
yeah.
to get very stressed out about it.
Right.
I did, and in the beginning, it would take me, I don't know, it took me a few weeks just to calm down, because I'd panic. I'm like, oh, I'm believing this, that's going to happen. Oh, this isn't going to happen because I believe this, and I'm like,
Right.
whoa,
Yeah.
calm down, take it one step at a time. But getting
And not
back,
all, yeah, just quickly as well, I just want to stress that not all beliefs are bad. There are some beliefs which really help us and serve us, and they're okay to hold on to. We just want to get rid of the ones that are limiting our potential.
yeah, I think that's great. I mean, something that I talk about in my online course rather frequently is that and I'm just going to relate this to beliefs as well. But if you're having technical issues, right? A lot of the technical issues you have are compensatory. So they're compensatory. They're things that your body is doing because one thing is not in balance. And when you balance that, they kind of magically just go poof and disappear because they're not needed anymore. So the same thing with beliefs. Let's say you find the ones that you feel identify as most limiting. If you replace that with an empowering belief, likely a lot of other ones are just going to go poof without you knowing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sometimes it's kind of like when you're at a bowling alley, you knock one down and a few others kind of just go down because they're in the trajectories of the ball, or another pin. Yeah, so exactly, you can sometimes get rid of and this is what I do when I'm working with people, is I give them what's called an intake form, and they can tick off all of the beliefs, or all, no, not beliefs, all of the things that they want to work on, whether it's on concentration or focus or self-belief or guilt, or there might be some things that they know that they're having to deal with from the past that's happened to them. And I basically say, well, these things are kind of related. Like, I did a session just today where we did about 5 things, but we only worked on one of them, but the others kind of went, once this other one went, the others went as well. So yeah, I agree.
It's been so much fun. Hey, everybody that's listening and tuning in, we want to thank you for being here sincerely. And I know you've all felt inspired. We have a few more minutes, but we're not going to drag it out to squeeze the last seconds out of it. If you have any more questions, really at all, then jump in and we'll just keep it open for a couple more minutes. So if you have a question you've been dying to ask, go ahead and type it in the chat right now. I'm just going to look at another couple comments here.
Carell, do you want to?
Yeah, Carell's got something. Carell's got something to say.
I don't want to hijack your session, But I wanted to say one thing first is that when it comes to, musicality and note reading and theory for a singer, I'm not a prude about it. I actually grew up playing by ear myself, and all of the people that I've worked for who were worth tens of millions of dollars, none of them had any theory background, right? I was just commenting specifically on a vocalist walking into a room with musicians and what power does it give them. That wasn't really speaking to the creative side of things or the songwriter. Right. So I just wanted to clarify that.
No worries, all good.
But when you're talking about limiting beliefs, I was just saying in the comment that the stereotype of the narcissistic star, like I found that to be not meaning that everyone who's a star is a bad person at all, and they're not all narcissists, but there's a disproportionate amount of narcissism that makes it to that level. Again, still can be good people, but when you see that stuff come out, you're like, oh wow. And I wonder if that's, in your opinion, part of the fact that they just don't get beat down because everyone in the world is wrong, and it's natural for them to
I totally get where you're coming from, Carell, because I used to work in the film industry, and I worked with many major artists and actors, who are on millions for what they did. And I found it really interesting observationally, because especially in the States where you have the Hollywood system, you have someone who's a star and they get surrounded by sycophants and they only get told positive things. Now, the reason is because we want the star to do their job so that we can earn the money, so give them what they want. But of course, what we're doing is this snowball effect of nobody ever says no. I mean, look at Michael Jackson. Look, there's so many artists in the world that made it really big, and nobody ever said no to them. And so it ends up having an impact on them in other ways and total imbalance. So I feel like the system creates the problem. They may not have been narcissistic in the beginning, though there are obviously narcissists who make it in every industry. And narcissists often get, to leadership roles. But definitely I feel like the industry creates that problem because it's convenient to them to make sure that the pop star or whoever's making the money for them is happy and producing, what they need to. And that is in itself, I feel, immoral. I feel very strongly about that, that we're creating very unhappy people. It's almost like, well, it does happen where, well, if they want to have the drug, just give it to them, keeps them happy. And that morally, I feel like there's a whole issue around that. And then this whole ability for some people to continue despite being rejected. You see it in every field of creativity. And that will be belief orientated. So that person will have a self-belief that helps them to continue in spite of rejection. It might be that they surround themselves by a good network of people as well that help them pick themselves up when they, have been rejected. But there's definitely a mindset issue to that, or mindset aspect to that. And that's what I work on when I'm working with artists. I go, people are going to say no, but it doesn't mean anything about you, and it certainly doesn't mean about whether you can succeed or not. And there will be people who will naturally have acquired that belief already, so it's not like we all have the same beliefs, but there are some common ones. Yeah. So Carell says, in some roles, also the star is literally the one. Yeah, of course. That's the other issue, is that because if that star is working, so I get paid. So I'll just give you what you want. And I see it all the time. And I've got friends who are working with major artists touring the world and hear some of their stories. And, it's been a perpetual issue ever since we created celebrities and stars. And Hollywood is to blame for that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was just on set filming my course. It's an epic, very comprehensive course. It's like I keep telling myself, don't put anything else in it. But then more things come that I want to say, and then I realize I'm if I keep going, I'm never going to
Never
finish
ending.
this course. It's like, I'll just keep talking to you. Just put on here live stream and I'll talk for the next 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So, but no, what I've really tried to do is consolidate everything down that I've learned from different trainings, different certifications, 3 different degrees, and 30 years of professional experience, and really organize this in a way that singers can take it and improve immediately. So it's very fun. It was a fun experience, and I'm very excited for people to get this material into their hands. And then you have all these limiting beliefs as well, you know. So it's like, but I'm not going to get into that. I'll tell you about that later in the story, but I just want to share how it was on set, right? Yeah, basically, I'm the artist, I'm the star, I'm paying them. They're supposed to tell me I'm great, right? So what I did was we got on set, and you know, it's a lot of pressure. It's very expensive. You have all the lights and cameras on you, and they're just, you know, going, you know, everybody's watching, right?
Mm.
And how's this guy going to do? Who is this guy? What is going to do? So what I made it a point, and this is a very simple thing to do, but I'm telling you, in theater and entertainment industry, it's magic. The first thing I did was I learned everybody's names, and I went and I greeted them by name, and I swear that the atmosphere on that set changed like that. And they were like, this guy actually learned my name. And he wants to talk to me as a person. And just continuing to involve them on that personal level, they became so vested in making this an amazing shoot. And I could just feel that from that moment on, we were like a little family, you know, we're going to do something great together. So it was a wonderful experience. But I have worked with plenty of people that didn't know anybody's names. They didn't want to. They didn't have the time to. They didn't care to. So maybe that's an interesting thought to explore, you know, because a lot of great, like Carell's saying, very narcissistic or extreme personalities create wonderful things that inspire generations. So I personally don't want to get on that bandwagon. I don't think that it's necessary at all, but that's my belief, right? But there is a certain advantage to having such powerful beliefs that nothing's really going to get in the way or dissuade from that person realizing that belief.
Yeah. But you don't have
What's the
to.
positives and what are the negatives about that extremism?
Well, I guess it depends on what's important to you.
Right.
You know, we can talk about very famous presidents.
Yeah, I think
What was
that's
important to him? Obviously, not the kind of same values that many other people have in the world.
right. It gets tricky, right? Because if we start saying everybody has to abide by our beliefs, we decide what's good. If I can't really say to an art, you know, it's I believe what we want or what I want from my clients and sharing and singers around the world and sharing this information is more to empower them to accelerate their process to what they believe in, what their personal goal is. And I think one thing I really want people to know is that one of the most your greatest capitals that's untapped is your individuality. That's the most unique thing you have to share.
Yeah. Well, I know you might use the word belief, but really that's your mission and that's your, you know, based on your values and your philosophy, not really your beliefs. So in terms of what I'm talking about, it's about limiting beliefs. Things like I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I don't have what it takes. And so when I'm talking about beliefs, it's that. It's not about religious beliefs. It's not about whether you believe, you know, philosophically or ethically or morally, you know, what's right for the world. But it's about what you believe you're capable of or not capable of. And that's what I feel stands in the way of a lot of people's progress and ability to fulfill their potential and have a happy life.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. This is really cool because Robert is in the live stream and he just said, "Hey, do you remember doing this Ariadne auf Naxos in Dortmund. I'm like, oh my gosh, I do remember that. That was such a fun experience, right? And he said it was thank you for saying it was inspiring to see you as Tanzmeister, because at that time I also had quite a few limiting beliefs. And Robert said he was at the beginning of his career there as well. And that's when I was transitioning. Of course, I've been on the stage for decades already. But, there's a very, very famous conductor, world famous conductor, and we were all kind of in awe. And but just interesting, Robert's is in the chat, so hi Robert. And yeah, I'm sure we all had some limiting beliefs at that time, and we're working to progress, reach our dreams. So I totally I want people to understand and get inspired by this, that what you want is attainable. The only thing slowing you down are what's slowing us down, Lynn?
The mindset. The mindset. And that's why when I work with artists, I always start with mindset.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. This has just been lovely, as always, inspiring and so much fun.
Yeah, great conversations. And I think we should do them more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what's coming. It's coming up. I'm giving you a sneak peek.
Awesome.
More open, just fun conversations, and also for people to be able to interact, and get inspired. Get inspired. So please feel free to reach out anytime at singingrevealed@gmail.com. And if you'd like to get a PDF of some of the tips and suggestions that Lynn has talked about today, contact us. Also, remember that I've put in the chat. I'll put it in the chat for you one more time. Here's a link to the free webinar. I don't even have that link anymore. I'm gonna have to go back and grab it. But an important webinar, a free webinar for you to watch, and I hope this inspires you and accelerates your progress. Just put it in the chat now. Go ahead and go there. It's a free webinar on how to maximize the efficiency of your practice. Reach out to us anytime at Sing and Revealed, and if you'd like to find out more about this new epic online course, we're going to be updating the website constantly. A lot of exciting things coming. And please, if you're not subscribed already, subscribe here to YouTube and Facebook, to our channel. Then you'll get notified when we have these amazing live streams with truly amazing educators from all around the world. So let's give some love to Lynn Hilton today. Go ahead and pop in the chat whether you enjoyed this session today, and then we get some hearts and thumbs up here. And
oh, I love the hearts. I didn't even know you could do that.
yeah, I've got one as well. I think I might still have it in here. This is for you, Lynn.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. Thank you.
We've got thank you for all you do from Jazari, and lots of hearts here on YouTube. And thank you. You can see some other comments in the chat. Really, always a pleasure. And thank you again, Lynn. Thanks so much, everybody.
You're really welcome. Best with your mindset.
Yes, best your mindset. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on Voice Masters live stream. Have a great day. Bye-bye.